I'm Christy and I have fibromyalgia. I've never done anything like this before and it may never see the light of day, but I'm hoping to share my fibro diagnosis story with you for two reasons. One, I feel if you ask anyone that has fibromyalgia about their diagnosis, there's always a tale to tell. So to kind of put my one out there to add to the tales and the horror stories. And two, when I was waiting to be diagnosed and fibromyalgia was a suggestion, I started doing my research and I never found any personal stories. And the one or two that I did were mega depressing and basically told me my life was over. And that wasn't helpful. And the other stuff that I would find was all medical, you know, NHS listing symptoms. So I'm hoping that by sharing mine, I can give you an honest idea of what to expect. But obviously everyone's diagnosis and symptoms and experience of it all is different. So this was my story. So my story starts in winter 2017. I had a chest infection, which wasn't unusual for me. I'm asthmatic, and generally every winter I had either a chest infection or at least a really bad cold. So no different. Felt at this point I was quite an expert in chest infections, knew what to expect. And after 2 weeks and antibiotics, I wasn't feeling better. If anything, I felt like I was getting worse. So I went back to the doctors and explained, you know, I still have really bad pain in my chest. And when I've had chest infections before, the pain, there was always a dull ache, but, you know, because you've overworked your muscles, but the pain for me was always when I breathed in and out, you know, because obviously you're putting more exertion on your muscles and stuff. But I was hurting all the time and very painful in my whole chest. And I was exhausted. I just didn't feel like, you know, when you've had an illness and you start coming to the end of it, you start, you know, I feel a bit better today. And, you know, you start feeling like your old self again. That wasn't happening. And from my experience with chest infections before, this felt different. So I'd gone back to the doctors, explained all of that. They checked my chest again and said it sounded clear. But to be safe, I think I was given another week of antibiotics, and they explained that it was probably that my chest muscles and my lungs had just been overworked and needed to rest. And I was like, makes sense, you know, I'm no spring chicken anymore. It probably just takes a little bit longer. So went away, another couple of weeks, still wasn't feeling like myself again. And I just, like I say, I kept feeling like I was getting worse rather than getting better. My whole chest, kind of from neck to belly button, just hurt. So chest and stomach just hurt all the time. And I was exhausted doing the most mundane things, just standing and filling the dishwasher or getting a shower. My breaking point and when I knew I needed to go back to the doctors came from getting a shower, because I have, you know, we have a bathtub and you step in to take a shower. Just getting over that took all of my energy, just to lift my legs up. Then to lift my hands up and wash my hair, I was crying in the shower because I was just so exhausted, and the pain of just holding my arms up for a few seconds hurt. And then it dawned on me, my house is an old northern terraced house. So the bathroom's downstairs, the bedroom's upstairs. So I was like crying, thinking, how am I going to get upstairs? So I remember crawling on my hands and knees up the stairs, just getting to my bed and collapsing and crying for about half an hour. And I just get thinking, I can't go on like this. This isn't normal. I shouldn't be this tired doing silly little normal everyday things. Don't get me wrong. When you have a cold or a chest infection or anything like that, you do feel run down and stuff is more effort. But this just felt completely different. So I went back to the doctors again, and this was a time when I was just ringing up to see any doctor. Whatever doctor was first available, I took it. So I wasn't seeing a specific doctor each time, and I never got to see the same doctor each time, which was maybe an error on my part. Maybe I should have kept asking for the same doctor, because at least they knew what I was going on about, but they have my notes online. So to me, I was just like, well, they'll read my notes. So I'll take whoever's available. I need to get this sorted. And this was when I started a period of, there was 2 diagnoses. I was either stressed or depressed. And disclaimer before I get into my moaning, I've suffered with mental health. I know people with mental health. I'm not putting it down or dismissing it in any way. Just I knew at this time in my life, from my previous experience, I wasn't stressed or depressed. And even if I was, I didn't feel like they was giving me the help. They were just saying, well, you're stressed, deal with it, and push me away. So I may be dismissive in how I talk about my experience here, but I am in no way dismissing mental health. It's a massive issue, still has stigma towards it. I wish it didn't, but please don't take it the wrong way, how I'm now going to speak about it. So yeah, the doctor's diagnosis for me at this time was I was just run down, stressed and or depressed. They put it down to 2 things. The reason why I could be stressed or depressed is I was a self-employed driving instructor. So, I mean, obviously that comes with stress. It's a stressful job, but I enjoy my job. I'm good at my job. I had an issue the year before where I'd been in a car crash. Thankfully, everyone was okay. But it did make me doubt myself, and it did make me question whether I was good and whether I was safe. And I did suffer some anxiety and panic attacks. There was one day where I just couldn't leave the house and go to a lesson. I was scared to go out. So I did see the doctors about it and went for some counselling, and it did really help me. I felt I dealt with that and I was back to a happy place in my job. I was really good with it. I didn't feel like that was still there, which, don't get me wrong, I know depression and mental health can hide and make you think different, but I felt good at this time. But I think they saw that in my notes. My cat's just going to go across the bottom. I do apologise. She's sitting with me. I felt good. The other thing they put it down to was I had just moved house a couple of months before. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, that is a stressful thing, but I had always wanted my own house. Being self-employed and single, it was really hard to get a mortgage, so I'd fought, and I'd finally got what I wanted, so there was no way I was going to be stressed about being in my own house. So I perhaps get their reasoning, but I didn't think it was that. And I kept saying, I'm in so much pain, my chest hurts all the time, my arms are hurting, I'm exhausted, help me. And they would just kind of say, oh, well, just, see how you are, go away for a bit. And there was never a way of fixing the depression or stress that they were saying it was. They didn't offer me antidepressants. They didn't offer or suggest counselling, because perhaps I'd used up my NHS quota, I get that. There was just, is that, see you later. And I kind of felt dismissed each time and almost stupid for going in. I felt like I was wasting their time, but I knew deep down, no, I've got to keep going back. I don't feel right. And it was really hard, being self-employed. You can't just take time off when you want. It's my reputation was on the line, because I had to get counselling lessons because I didn't feel well, and to go to doctor's appointments. And then I wasn't even getting an answer to fix it, so I was just wasting everyone's time. So I was kind of a bit stressed. So they were making me stressed, but the stress wasn't there before. So back and forth, I must have seen 4 or 5 different doctors in the space of 2 months. And they all just kept saying the same thing. And I did snap at one of them in the end and said, when they were like, oh, is there anything that's making you stressed? I was like, yeah, the fact that no one's listening to me. I genuinely do not feel well, and no one is listening, no one is helping. And even then it was just, well, see how you feel in a week, and then if you don't feel right, book in and see us again. Okay, thanks. So I took my mum with me to an appointment, because I think my mum and dad started thinking, you're all right, you're obviously not saying the right stuff, or you're full of it, And my mum came with me, and she was like, yeah, you were dismissed. And my mum even said to the doctor, this isn't my daughter anymore. She's exhausted, doing the silliest of things, she's the shell of her former self. This isn't who she is. And again, well, it's probably just, the time of the year, and you've got a lot on this year and stuff like that. And Finally, one doctor took pity on me or wanted to shut me up and decided to start investigating the pain in my chest. So I was sent for a chest x-ray, blood tests, an ECG, all that kind of stuff. I had to do a hideous stress test where you run on the treadmill. I nearly died. I don't know how I did that. And then that all came back clear. So then, because of my asthma, they decided to look into my lungs. So I did a lung function test, more bloods, some other tests that I can't remember. And because my sleep was dreadful at this point, I wasn't sleeping because of the pain and just, I was so exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. So they also sent me for sleep apnea and sleep tests where you wear the little machine and it monitors you while you sleep. That actually didn't work the first time, so I went back into the doctors to arrange to do that again, and this is where everything changed. This is where I met my amazing doctor, and something happened. I was meant to see her, and I'm so glad I got that appointment with her that day, because I think if I hadn't have seen her, I would have been fighting a lot longer to get the diagnosis. Before I went in, she had read everything about what had gone on. And as soon as I walked in, she was like, I don't really know why this hasn't been sorted. She's like, you should have seen a specialist for your lung and your heart at the same time. Don't know why it had to be one at a time. And also, I don't think it's that anyway. And I'd spoken to a few other doctors before. My mum has MS, and we didn't have all the same symptoms, but we had very similar symptoms and a lot of crossover symptoms. And it can run in the family. So I started to question that, and everyone was like, no, it's not that. I didn't even look into it. And straight away, this amazing doctor was like, I don't think it's MS, but I think it's going to be something like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, or fibromyalgia. I'd heard of the first two, never heard of fibromyalgia. And I was like, okay, so, what do we do? And she's like, I've referred you to the rheumatologist. That may take a little while, but they will then sort this out once and for all. Go and get this blood test done, because that will show markers for either lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, and that will help you get a quicker diagnosis when you see the rheumatologist. And until then, it's just waiting, I'm afraid. And she was apologising for the wait, but she had moved everything forward in that 10-minute it's not an interview, in that 10-minute appointment than any of the other doctors had. I could have kissed her. Like, literally, I was so, okay, someone's listening, and it's not just being palmed off as stress. Okay, brilliant. So this is when I went home and started Googling fibromyalgia and lupus and all of that. And lupus and fibromyalgia do have quite similar symptoms, but I didn't think I had lupus because I wasn't getting the facial, the butterfly rash, and there was a few other things that didn't seem right. But I started to think, okay, fibromyalgia does sort of seem like what I've got, and I started looking more into it. But like I say, there wasn't a lot out there. There was the medical sites, but even they didn't know much about fibromyalgia, and still don't, as we all know, because there's not a lot of research into it. But the symptoms that were listed and the information that could give me matched me, and I was like, this makes sense. And I saw, it was around about this time that Lady Gaga released 5'2" documentary where she mentioned her diagnosis with fibromyalgia and how she deals with it. So I watched that and saw her in pain and struggling, and I was like, that's me. And obviously I'm not like a celebrity and I don't have the life she has, but there was bits of her life that I was like, that's exactly how I'm feeling. So I have to say, I kind of did go into my rheumatology appointment thinking, it's got to be that, surely, and if it's not, what is it? So at the appointment with the rheumatologist, I went in and she did a couple of, she felt my joints and she did the stress test where they hit your hammer with a knee, and she looked through my blood tests, and then she sat me down and she went through it all, and she said, I'm pretty happy that the markers that we would see in your blood aren't there, so you don't have lupus, you don't have rheumatoid arthritis, and I can't feel any swelling in your joints, so I'm satisfied you don't have arthritis. So she said, I'm sorry to say, that leaves me to diagnose you with fibromyalgia. And she was really apologetic and looked really, I'm so sorry. And I think I beamed smiling because I was like, oh my God, I have a name, I have something. You know, someone's not only believed me, but I now have something to say. I have this. This explains everything that's gone on. So I was just thrilled, even though now I know what life is like with fibromyalgia. I maybe wouldn't have been as thrilled, but I was just so happy that this rheumatologist and my GP had worked out what it was and had listened to me and not just dismissed me as some crazy stressed moany cow. You know, they knew something was wrong and they pushed the right direction, and I was just so happy. She gave me, at the time they were called Arthritis UK, but they're called Versus Arthritis now, like a little booklet on it, and I remember clinging onto that with dear life, like, oh my God, this is me. And she started referrals for physio and to send messages back to my doctor to look at putting me on amitriptyline and start trying to find a course of medication and physio to start trying to help me with everything. And I just remember being so happy, if you can be happy with a fibromyalgia diagnosis, because I'd got there. And I remember going outside, I took my mum and dad with me, and I remember like running out with my book, like, I've got fibro, they've listened, and I just was so happy and relieved finally. And all of this had probably happened in the space of a year, which when you compare me to other people, there's people that have been 4, 5, nearly 10 years, some people that are fighting for diagnosis. So mine was pretty quick considering, and that there'll be people that was quicker than me as well, because there are some doctors that do listen and do understand fibromyalgia. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of doctors that are dismissive of it and don't understand it or don't want to refer you down that path because they don't really get it. I got lucky that I found her that day and I saw her. And I know, I'm saying it took forever and I was frustrated, but I know there's people that have had a lot longer fight than I have. But this was just my story. And I got there. The biggest thing I would say, if you are waiting to be diagnosed, or if you're starting to have the inkling like, oh, okay, the symptoms for fibromyalgia do fit with me, keep fighting, keep going back to your doctor. It is stressful, it is depressing. The amount of times I'd come out and just go and sit in my car, head in my hands, and think, oh, for goodness sake, no one's listening. Am I stressed? Am I just a bit of a lazy cow at the moment? I can't do what I normally could. You will doubt yourself, and you will go through it mentally, because it is really hard to not only have your body changing and start doing or not being able to do things it couldn't, but then to adapt to that and to realise that you've got to try and find out what it is and to get someone to listen and just then get the diagnosis. It is a really tough time, and don't get me wrong, when you do get the diagnosis, it doesn't go and you're fine, you don't feel better, but at least you know what you're fighting and you can start finding your treatment and what works for you. And you can't treat something until you know what it is. So the minute I got that name and the minute I got told you have fibromyalgia, I could start doing more research into that. I could start working out what treatment worked for me, trying different medications, trying different therapies. So it changed everything, and it was a blooming horrible fight at times, and there were times when I really did doubt everything, but stick with it. You know your body, you know how you should feel and what feels wrong, so trust yourself, keep fighting as hard as it is, and you will get there. Thanks for letting me waffle on. I hope this has helped someone out there that's waiting to be diagnosed or has questions about fibromyalgia. If you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to try and help. I'm not an expert in fibromyalgia, and I'm only an expert in my fibromyalgia, but I'm more than happy to try to help. I'm on Instagram at When Life Gives You Fibro. I'll leave a message below. But yeah, I hope if you are fighting for a diagnosis, you get it very, very soon. Take care.